السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Messenger of Allah said, إذا سافرتم في الخصب فأعطوا الإبل حظها من الأرض. When you guys travel in a period of, it's very fertile, it's very nice and green and there's lots of plants, then make sure to give the camel its right from the earth. وَإِذَا سَافَرْتُمْ فِي الْجَدْبِ فَأَسْرِعُوا عَلَيْهِ السَّيْرِ. And when you travel in a time where it's very dry and the plants are eaten up and there's not too much food for the animals there, then speed up and don't go slow, but you need to travel faster. وَبَادِرُوا بِهَا نِقِحًا. So that basically it doesn't, the hump of the camel and the animal doesn't diminish. وَإِذَا عَرَّسْتُمْ فَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّرِيقِ. And when you stop your journey and your caravan and you encamp at nighttime, then make sure that you avoid the pathways, basically the flat land, as opposed to being on something that's not flat land. فَإِنَّهَا طُرُقُ الدَّوَابِ وَمَأْوَى الْأَهْوَامِ بِاللَّيْلِ. That is the pathway of the animals, wild animals, and the pathway of like insects and all of that at nighttime. Rawahu Muslim. And this hadith is in Muslim. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's talking about when you travel, and this is again in the past, it's not the same thing now, but when he says when you travel, make sure to think and be considerate about the animal that you're riding on, and make sure to be considerate about the other animals that are going to be there on the pathway, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created every living thing. And when you are put in a position of authority over something else of Allah's creation, like animals, they have a right over you. And look at the wording that he used. He says, give the, this hadith is حظها, give it its share of the land. There's another narration which says, give it its right. So this is when it comes to animals. One of the scholars, he reflected and he said, if you look at Islam's teaching about animals, if this is what Islam says about animals, then what about human beings? What about in a circumstance where if you have to make sure that your camel, you have to make sure that it's not getting weak and going hungry, and you care about the insects and all these things? Imagine if you're put in a position of authority, how would you treat human beings which are much higher than animals? And unfortunately, we have people today who think that human beings at some level are lower than animals. And we find some movements, surprisingly, who actually sit there and talk about the saving the rainforests, and they're petitioning and campaigning and saying we must protect this tree, we must protect this endangered species. And yet, when you look at their, when people are dying, when people are being killed, they're being slaughtered, they're being starved, there's no food, you don't find them saying anything. Such an irony that exists in our world when it comes to human rights and when it comes to caring about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make sure this contradiction never comes into yourself. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us and guide us at all times. Ameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.